and Machine Learning. My name's Tim Cummings. Tonight we're looking at how to send email from a Python program, and we'll be doing it using Python code running on your computer. So you will need Python installed on your computer, and it's probably a good idea if you have an IDE such as PyCharm Community Edition as well. We're a regular meetup every week or two, teaching beginners how to use Python and how to get into machine learning. I won't be doing any machine learning tonight. Our next machine learning event will be an in-person event at Brisbane Business Hub in Queen Street Mall, and you can see a picture of the venue here. There's Arun taking our last in-person event. So it's a really nice event. I've heard there might even be pizza sponsored by Amazon. So I recommend coming along to that. Anyway, tonight, let's get started. So I've got the source code here in GitHub, and I've got a link. So this is the meetup page. The link will also be below the YouTube video that you're currently watching. So if you go to that link, that'll open up in GitHub, and you'll see the Python script that we're going to be using. Now, sending emails quite tricky, so you probably won't be writing much code tonight. You'll just be trying to get the code that I've got running, and that'll be a challenge enough. All right, so I recommend you download this code, so you can click on the raw button to just see the code and save this page. So I'll go into more tools, save page as, and let's find a place to put it. Put it in our PyCharm projects. Let's create a new folder for this one. I'll call it Beginners Python and Machine Learning number 177. And we'll save our Python file meetup 177 Tim email. Okay, so that naming scheme that is Tim's, that's the one that I've written. Arun does some of these as well, so we'll put his name on the ones he's done. And the subject for tonight is email. So this is a live stream, and the advantage of live streams is that you can communicate with us during it. So I'll be watching on Slack, our Slack channel here, Learning to Code, and I've just realized that my streaming software didn't show me the YouTube. So let's have a look if I can get the YouTube chat. No, I better pull that up. All right, yes, so there's the YouTube chat. All right, I've already got one message from Agupta. Hi, Agupta. All right, so we've saved our software now. I'm going to use PyCharm Community Edition. You just need a text editor and a command line, but these integrated development environments are a lot easier to work. So let's open this folder that we've created. There it is, and we'll trust the project. Okay, so we've got a project folder and our Python file. So I've got some instructions on here. So the first bit that we're going to have to work with, first of all, let's put your email address in here, this is where you'll be sending email addresses to during tonight's session. So I'll put my email address in, which is just a test email I don't use for anything else. But you put in your own. Okay, and an image file, bpaml.webp. So I may as well get that set up now. Copy an image into your project directory. I've got one. I'm just going to copy it in now. Let's see. Copy that. And paste. So this is my web directory in PyCharm projects, and I've just created an image file there. Mine's a WebP, but it could be a JPEG. That'll work as well, or a PNG. And there's my Python script. And if I look up here, you'll see that it's showing there. Now this WebP image I've chosen is just the I've just downloaded this image here. So if you want to use the same image, you can do that. Just right click and say save image as, and call it bpaml.webp. Alright, so that's the setup. Okay, now if you're doing this from the command line, you just create a folder. I've got a different name here, bpaml email pdf and cd bpaml email pdf. So this is a copy of Meetup 65 that we did a couple of years ago, and it was a two-part series then. In the second part we were sending emails, we're sending PDFs with the emails, and if there's any demand for that, I can certainly do the PDF part of it if you like this session. All right, now we have to create a virtual environment. Now this is something that I really recommend for any of your Python development, is to set up a virtual environment that isolates the work you do in for this Python project with any one of your other Python projects. And this is one of the advantages of an IDE such as PyCharm, is it does this bit for you automatically. But if you're having to do it from the command line, these are the commands that you'll have to do. I'm just going to go straight here to task 3, install the requirements. So I have to create a file called requirements.txt in the project directory. So I'll just right click here on the project directory and say new file. And it doesn't have to be called this, but every Python programmer I know uses this same name, so it certainly makes it easier to follow if you use the same name everyone else does. Requirements.txt. And in that file, we're just going to copy these names of the 4 third-party libraries that we're going to need. Paste. And we'll paste them in. Okay. We can ignore the extension here because PyCharm actually does a pretty good job with requirements.txt all by itself. And see, even PyCharm has recognized this name. So it says, oh, do you really want to install all of these? And we go, yep, that's pretty good. And what it's going to do, let's have a look in settings, which is preferences on a Mac. Down here under your project, you'll have your Python interpreter. And your Python interpreter will say which interpreter you're going to use. Now, if you look there, you'll see it's using just the standard Python. It hasn't created the virtual environment, which is a shame. But so let's create a virtual environment. So I'll go into show all. So see where I am. I'm in file settings. I went down to the project and opened up project Python interpreter. And now I'm going to go show all to create a virtual environment. And this is where I say add new interpreter. And so sometimes it does this bit automatically. It hasn't for me, probably because it's seen that I'm just using a local Python install. So I've got normal Python installed, so I'm going to use a virtual env environment. If you've got Anaconda installed, then create a Conda environment, and you don't need to worry about these other ones. Okay, so we're going to create a new one. It's going to be stored in the project directory, and it's going to be based on Python 3.10. So we'll create that virtual environment. Associate this virtual environment with this current project. Okay, and there it is, all set up nicely for us. So now this message here is saying that it's not using, these are not installed in our virtual environment, and so now we can install them. So it's best if you create your virtual environment before you install these. So please ask any questions if you want any more information about virtual environments. But what we're trying to do is make sure that these don't mess up any other projects that we've got. And you can see down here in the bottom right hand corner, it's saying that this is the virtual environment we're using, the one in BPAML 177. And you can see here the progress, how it's going, installing things. It's going to the Pipi repositories and grabbing these libraries and any dependencies that these libraries have. Okay, so they're installed successfully. Okay, now our first, this whole file is just a bunch of functions that have been defined, and nothing runs. They're all been they've been defined but not called. So what to use this file, what we'll do is uncomment the calling of each task, each function, as we need it, and then we'll comment it back up so it doesn't affect other things. So you can see up here we've got current file. We want to run the file. So if I press run, it'll just come back and say, yep, it ran, nothing happened, exited code 0, which means success. So it just didn't do anything. Okay, so now we're going to do this task 4, which is create an email message using email message, email.message.email message. So this is a standard library, email.message. I've got a link here if you want to read more about it, and it shows you how to assemble an email message that you want to send. And it's really a data structure that we're going to use. So we've got to create some body. So for the body, I've used this triple quoted string, and it's an F string, so I can insert some detail. I'm going to put in the value of our subject variable is going to go into the string, and the value of what the current time is, so I can keep track of which email is which when we're sending them tonight. So it says email message equals email message, so that's a constructor of a data type called email message. See, it's a class there. I'm going to set the content to this string that we've just created up here. I'm going to set the subject to whatever gets called in here. So message from string is a function, and the default argument is creating a plain text email. I'm going to set the email to, and I'm going to set this preamble, which is not really that important, but I just get amused by setting it, so you don't need to do that one. All right, so here's the line that calls it, message from string. Let's uncomment that, and let's run it. And what it's going to do is it's going to create this email message, and it's just going to print it to the screen. And it's printed it here down in our run tab, and we can see what it is. It's using content transfer encoding 7-bit, and there's our subject, creating a plain text email, where it's going to go if it gets sent, a little bit of text including when it was created, and our subject, which is the same as up here. Alright, so that's done nothing, it's just really printed it out, but it's shown us how to create an email message. And if you want to see more details on what we've done here, have a look in these hyperlinks here on the Python docs. Alright, now we want to communicate with a SendMail server. And so what I thought I'd do first is get one that can run on everyone's computer, and it's just written in Python. So if you can run Python, then you can run this SendMail server, and it's just a debugging one. It won't actually send the mail, but it'll behave like a SendMail server will. And so we can try sending it and just see the communications that go between our program and the SendMail server. So to run it, you have to run this command here. So I'm just going to copy that with Control C, and I'm going to open up a terminal tab here. So this terminal, so it's going to be Windows PowerShell, so it can be Bash on Linux or Mac, whatever shell they're using, which is Bash compatible. And we're just going to run this command here, and you can see right at the beginning it's got VENV in parentheses, and that's advising us that we're in our virtual environment. And that's important because we need to be to run this AIO SMTPD server. So AIO means async input output. SMTP is the send mail or simple mail transfer protocol, and it can run as a daemon. It just runs in the background. All right, so let's run that. Paste that, and we've given it the arguments. We want to be listening on port 8025. If you know anything about networking, normal SendMail servers will be listening on port 25, but because that's below 1000, you'll need administrator access on your computer to be able to open up port 25, and some people might not have that, so we'll just go with 8025, which is actually, I think, the default for this AIO SMTPD. And we'll turn on debug with --debug, and see it go. Okay, so we've now got a server running on port 8025, and we can swap back to our Run tab. And what we're going to do is we're going to send a message using that. So it's not really going to send it, but it's going to show us how our program communicates with the SendMail server. Okay, so let's uncomment the first one, send message via AIO SMTPD, and run. Okay. So if you remember, we've still got our print command where it's printing out our message to start with, and then the second one we're doing is it's logging the communication with our SendMail server. So send is anything that's come from our program, and anything that says reply, that's anything that's come back from our SendMail server. So we've sent a hello command, and we've said where we're coming from, so that's just my local IP address. And EHLO, that's in the early days, it used to be HELO because they wanted to have 4-letter commands, and that meant hello. And then we got some enhanced features, so this is the enhanced hello command. So by starting off with enhanced hello, we're telling the SendMail server that we've got a few enhanced features. It's going to tell us what it can do. So it replies, it says, this is who I am. I'm Tim Laptop G515. I can handle 8-bit MIME. I can provide help, and it's returned to code 250. So 250 means everything's good. So then we go, okay, we want to send a mail, and we want to send it from this address. And so the SendMail server says okay, and gives us the return code 250, which means okay. We go, okay, we want to send it to this address. Once again, we get an okay come back, and we say, this is the data that we want to send. And it says, okay, start sending me the data, but end it with a carriage return line feed dot carriage return line feed. And I say, my program goes, okay, here's the data. So it sends it all, and this is what we saw before: 7-bit encoding, MIME version, subject, everything. And then right at the end, it's got carriage return line feed, full stop, carriage return line feed. because that's what the SendMail server instructed us to do, to say when we'd come to the end. So the SendMail server says, yep, that's okay. And we just said, okay, we'll quit. And then the SendMail server says bye. And so that's the communication that happened. It looked like everything went well there. So let me know in the chat if you got the same sort of communication happening between you and your SendMail server. Now I'm going to comment these out so they don't disturb us again. Let's have a look at if we send some Unicode, if there's any difference. The other thing you can do, you can go to the terminal and see that all those messages happening from the other perspective. So this is from this perspective of, this is the SendMail server logging what it received. So it received the hello, received that it wanted, someone wanted to send mail, it wanted to send mail to this address. It said what the mail is, and that's it. Oh, there we go. And then we quit, and connection was lost. Okay. So let's try what happens if we send something a little bit more complicated. And what we're going to send now is this message here, which is the same subject, but it's got this emoji Unicode character here. And I'll just see what that looks like when it gets sent. So I'll just run that. And now this looks pretty much the same. When we get down to here, our email message library has noticed that we're not able to use 7-bit MIME, so we're using quoted printable for sending this data, because there's a little bit more complicated characters. And then when it comes to sending that character, it has to decode it out like that. So there's just the escape codes to convert a smiley face into something that email servers can use, because they really don't like using anything more than 7-bit characters. Okay, and once again, in here is the same thing, encoded in a different way. All right. Now we're going to try to send a message through your ISP. So this one you have to know who your ISP is. So if you're on, like on a Telstra or BigPond account, it'll be smtp.telstra.com. If you're on Optus, it'll be mail.optusnet.com.au. If it's TPG, it'll be mail.tpg.com.au. I'm with an ISP that doesn't even provide a SendMail server. So fortunately, I've set one up myself that I can communicate with, but it's limited to my IP address, so you won't be able to communicate through my SendMail server. And really setting up these servers is, there's a lot of time taken in making sure that you don't set up an open relay, because then if the spammers find it, they will definitely take advantage of it and start sending spam through to the world through your server and get you put on blacklists everywhere. Okay, so I'm going to open up, this is my the host name for my SendMail server. We're going to create a message that just says test ISP server. Can't use Google SMTP. So we're going to later show you how to, the best way of using a Google SendMail server. I've seen people use it in demos, just I think smtp.google.com. But anyway, I don't know if it needs authentication. So the advantage of your ISP one is it doesn't need authentication, and for mine, because it's coming from my IP address, it doesn't need authentication either. But certainly try that. If you haven't got your own, then try, I think it's smtp.google.com as the server, and see how it works. Alright, and we've set the debug level so that we can see what's going. So this is a library. This is one of the standard libraries. So we've imported smtplib and said use smtp protocols for sending this email, and we've used that email message just as we created before. Okay. So we said hello to my server. My server's replied back with its name. So that's the first thing it should do, is reply back with its name. And then the next things it should reply back is what capabilities it's got. So it's come back with all these capabilities, a bit more than our little AIO SMTPD. Pipelining, size, ETRN. So this is an important one here, start TLS. So what that's saying is that we can start with an unencrypted connection, and then we can turn on encryption. So transport layer security is encryption, and we can start that halfway through the connection, and because my server has that capability. And there's all the sends and replies of how it communicated, and it said it queued it successfully. So let's have a look to see if it actually arrived in our email. So we're sending it to Pythonator Dev, and Pythonator Dev has got nothing there in the inbox. So let's just refresh, see if there's anything there. There it is, it came. Wow. So I was expecting that to get sent to spam, but it may be that they've worked out who I am, and that I'm okay to send emails on behalf of Pythonator.com. But you'll probably find that if you used the from address as bpaml@pythonator.com, that you would have got sent to spam if you send it to your Gmail account. But I'm quite pleased that didn't go into spam, and we can see that that's successfully been sent from my Python program. So let me know if you're able to successfully send an email and receive it in your inbox. Now, one of the things that we can do here is we can turn on. All right, I've got a question here. What if you use Microsoft Outlook Mail? Yeah, so you could send this to a Microsoft Outlook account, and the same sort of thing. It might show up in spam, or it might come through to the inbox. There's nothing special at this stage about sending it to Gmail or Outlook, or it could be just any personal email account. And I've just used this Gmail one that I use for this demonstration purposes, and I don't use it for anything else. Later on, we're going to be showing how to send specifically Gmails, because there's a bunch of specific stuff that will only work with Gmail, but most people have got a Gmail account, so they can do that. Now, if you want to use Outlook, just Outlook uses a different API to do it. So, and I've actually covered that in another session. I can't remember which one it is, but how to send emails using the Microsoft Outlook API. But I can look it up for you. So if we go to if you look on GitHub in the Beginners Python and Machine Learning Sessions repository in online. I've got one here which was using the Microsoft API, and it was we were using it for something else mostly, but it did touch on sending emails. Here we go, upload to OneDrive using Graph Delegated. So this one looks at the Microsoft API and programmatic control of OneDrive, SharePoint, and Microsoft Email. So have a look at this one if you want to, this number 148, if you want to see how you go about sending an email as though you were using the Microsoft API system. All right, now we saw here when we started that it had the start TLS capability. So let's try starting TLS and see if we can do the same thing. So I've just added another line here on line 130, set the debug level to 1 still, and then start TLS. So let's run that. So we say hello, it comes back and says, yep, I can do start TLS. So then I say, okay, let's start TLS. So I send the command. So it says ready to start TLS, ready, and then we do the hello again. And this time it hasn't got start TLS in the list because we're already in TLS. We already have transport layer security running. And if we look in our inbox, let's see if that one makes it through. Or did it go through to spam? No. Anyway, it just might be taking a minute or so to get here. That one's not so important. We'll come back later and see if it comes in. But I just really wanted to show you how to start an encrypted connection. Okay, let's comment that one back out. And keep going. All right, set up a Gmail account for sending emails. So this is where we're really getting into the Gmail API. And it's quite complicated. It's like the steps aren't that hard, but if you get one wrong, it's really hard to work out what went wrong. So I'd recommend going to this address. So this is our Python quick start, where they give you instructions on how to send it, and the steps. So to run this, you need, well, they're saying 3.10.7 or later, pip, which we've used to create a virtual environment, a project. So we need to create a project. So that's the first thing we'll do, is we'll create a project. So I'll click on that, and that will give us the link to create a project, which will be the same link here, console.cloud.google.com. And you can see I'm in developers, so let's go to create a project. So now I'm in console.cloud.google.com, and I've gone straight to project create, and let's create a project. I've got 9 projects remaining, so I'm going to call the project BPAML 177, so I know what it's linked to, no organization, and create. Okay, and let's select it. Oh, it's still making it. There we go. So I'm trying to start from scratch as much as possible so that what I see is the same as what you see. Okay, we created a project. We go through the steps here. Set up your environment. Now you have to enable the API, and I've given a link here that enables the Gmail API. So we click on this button. So remember, we're going through the Quick Start Python here. Enable the API. And it says enable access to API, and it's the Gmail API is what we're trying to do. And we're doing it for this project, BPAML 177. Enable the Gmail API. Yes, that's what I want. Enable. So it's really hard if you miss a step. It doesn't say, oh, you forgot to enable the API. It just says nope, not working, and so it's quite complicated. Okay, the next step: authorize credentials for a desktop application. And really, I think that's slightly wrong. What we're really supposed to be doing is configuring the consent screen. But let's click the link and see what it tells us. Remember to configure the OAuth consent screen with information about your application. So you have to do that first. So let's do that, and then we'll come back here and create these credentials. So I click on the OAuth consent. We have to say external because we're not in an organization, so it has to be external. So we'll create that. And these are the steps we're going to do. Now we're going to set the scopes. Sorry, actually we're still in the consent screen. So the app name, let's call it BPAML 177, and so I've given just some information over here. Now this is user support email, so put in your Gmail account there. All this other stuff we don't need to worry about, except down here, developer contact information. This is a compulsory field, and so once again just put in your same email address. And save and continue. So if you've got all that correct, it'll let you go on to the next step, which is, I have to click it twice. So yeah, we've got a tick on OAuth consent screen. Now the scopes. We have to add some scopes in there. So we'll click on add or remove scopes, and it gives us this list here. And if you hadn't enabled the Gmail API before, you'll find that Gmail API won't be in this list. I'm going to make the number of rows per page a bit longer so that we can see a bit more stuff. In fact, let's do a filter because there's quite a few there. So we'll do a filter, and I suggested it here, the filter API : Gmail API. So we're going to do API : Gmail API. That's the filter, and I'll press enter. So it's done it for me. So down here I can find the ones that I want, and these are the two. I want gmail.read-only and gmail.send. So the read-only is so that if we want to look at what folders this person has in their Gmail, which would be useful, but the one really going to use tonight is send. So, and we click update to add those two scopes to our application. Now if you look in the Python Quick Start, they'll give a demo application that will use that gmail.read-only. So that's why I put that in, just in case you wanted to run that demo as well. It's a good little demo. If we've got time at the end, I might go back and do it. Alright, so Gmail API, we can see we've got a sensitive scope, which is gmail.send, and this restricted scope, gmail.read-only. Save and continue. Now we need to add in some test users. Once again, just put in your email address because you'll be the only one doing this. And save and continue. And there's our OAuth consent screen. We've sent everything, and let's go back to the dashboard. Alright, now we're back here. Now we can do what they said originally, which was create the credentials. So you can click on this link here, or we can go up to let's see, is it this one? APIs and services, credentials, create credentials. And we want to create an OAuth client ID. Okay, so in here we say desktop app, because we're writing in Python. We'll give it a name. And that's been created. Now we can download this, and I'm going to delete this afterwards, so don't try copying what you're seeing here. And that's downloaded it. So you should have your own credentials file. Let's go grab it out of the folder. So we'll copy that and we'll stick it into here, paste it in, and we'll rename it. So I just want it to be called client-secret.json. Okay, so that's a secret that'll help authorize us to do this sending of the email. So if we look back in here in our project, we'll see we've now got our client-secret.json. All right. Now we'll go back to the quick start. We've done that. Install the libraries, we've already done that. And configure the sample. So here's the sample. So if you want, you can copy all that and try running it. You might have to change the name. So this one here should be client-secret.json. All right, back here. So we've done all this. Oh yeah. So the other thing. So let's see. I've got the two scopes here that we added, which was gmail.send and gmail.readonly. And what this little bit of code is, which I've copied pretty much from here, just changed a couple of names and put it in a function for itself so that I can call it from different places. And so this one function can do both those scopes, but if you look in their sample code here, they're only looking at one scope, which is the read-only one. Okay. So now we're going to try to send an email using that scope. So what it does, it'll look up our client secret file, and it'll also look for a file called token.json. And if it doesn't find the token.json, then it has to get, the user has to authorize themselves. And so this if we'll be authorizing through a web browser, and by doing that it's more secure, because we never get to see, our program never gets to see the password being typed in, so we can't do anything with it. It all happens in the web browser, and it creates the token JSON, and that's all we get to see, that's all we can use. And so every application that uses this API gets its own token.json, so you can just delete one token, one authorization in Google, and you're only stopping one program from accessing the API, and so it gives you a much finer control over the security of your system. All right, so let's run this. Let's try send message via Gmail. So this is running, and you can see it's jumped straight to the web browser and said choose an account. So I'm going to use Pythonator Dev. Google hasn't verified this app, but we know it's okay because we wrote it. So we'll click on continue. Most people would click back to safety. Now here's an important thing. You have to tick these boxes. Really, that's the one that we want, send email, but we'll do both and say we want a token that allows us to do both of these things, which is viewing, that's the read-only one, and that's the gmail.send. Make sure you trust BPAML 177. We trust it because we wrote it. And let's continue. Okay, the authentication flow is completed. You may close this window. So that's come from our Python program. It's called that in the browser. So now if we look in our project folder, there's another file that's been created, and it's token.json. So now that that's been created, the message should have been sent. So let's see if we've got a message called task 9, send email via Gmail. And there it is, send email via Gmail. And that's the one, task 9. It just got sent a couple of minutes ago. So that's how we successfully send an email, and you can see that it'll even be in our sent items here. Send email via Gmail. These are the ones from a previous project we've done. Okay. Okay, so task 10, we're going to see if we can attach an image to our email. Oh, by the way, so your from address, I've got this one set to my email account, my Gmail account. So you have to make sure you set that one to yours if you wanted that to work with the client secret that you had, because that client secret is linked to that Gmail address. All right, as everyone's successful in getting an email sent to and from their Gmail account. So the image, we'll call this message from string. That'll create our email message. We'll open our image file. So R means we're going to read the image file. B means it's a binary file rather than a text file. And we'll store all the bytes of the data, the binary data, into a variable called image data. So it's a bytes object. And it'll be this WebP image of our new location, our venue that we use. Then we'll use this function here, image header, that'll look at the image, examine the header to find out what type it is. So in this case it'll be a WebP, but if you used a JPEG that's fine as well, because that'll image header will identify that. And it'll call this method on the email message object to add the attachment, and it'll give it a file name and the image dot, and the subtype will be, in this case, WebP or JPEG if you have a JPEG. Then we return that message. So that's the message we want to send with an attachment. You can choose whether you want to send it through your ISP if you've got that working, or through Gmail if you've got Gmail working, or if you just want to send it, try sending it through a debugging server so you can see what's actually going on if you didn't get in the other two working. So I'm going to send it via Gmail. And let's run this. So we got a good response from Gmail. Let's have a look in our Gmail inbox and see if it arrived. There it is, attaching a WebP image to an email. So there's the text of our email, and here's our WebP attachment that got attached to it just at the bottom there. If you look at the message, you can go to this menu here and say show original, and this shows the data that's come in this email, and there it is. I expected it to be longer than that because it's got an image, but it's not showing that part of the image for some reason. All right, well, we'll try it for another one later and see what that looks like. Okay, so I'll comment this one back out. So sending HTML is also an interesting thing that you can do when you're sending emails, so you can get it formatted nicely. Now, one of the problems with doing these demonstrations is you don't want to have to type a lot, but you want to come up with some data content to make it a little bit more interesting. So what I've done is I've used I've gone through this standard library, Unicode data, and looked up all the Unicode characters in the range up to 7,258 and pulled out anyone that's got a category with a name digit in it. So I thought that might be interesting. And then I've created an HTML table here. You see there's my table open tag, close tag, and I've created a row for each of the digits in different languages out of the Unicode library. Okay, so I'll create this HTML message. So you can see it starts off with HTML. It's got a head with some styles in it. We've got a paragraph with a bit of formatting on that, so that should be emphasized, so that'll be in italics. There's our digits, and then we close off the body and close off the HTML. So let's see what an HTML message looks like when we've sent it. Here we go, HTML email. So here we go, our favorite numbers. So you can see the favorite is in italics, like we said, and it's pulled out all the digits. So there's your normal digits that we're used to, and there's the Arabic digits, and all these other Bengali, Tamil. Some of them, like the Thai ones, are not even in the font that I'm using here. So it's just coming up as squares, but they are part of the Unicode standard. So they're just all the ones that are in the font that I've used. So that's interesting. Let's have a look at the original for that. So there you can see all the HTML. There's the plain text version of it. There we go. So you can see it sends the email twice as plain text and as HTML. So if the HTML is available, it doesn't show the plain text, and so that's what you would normally put the same content in both. I've put different content in both just to emphasize that only one of them is being shown. And so you see here the plain text one is not being shown at all, only the HTML one is being shown. And that the reason you send both is so that depending on what email client the recipient is using, they can choose, they can see either the message in either a formatted style or in a plain text file style. All right. Okay, embed an image in the HTML message. This is a little bit more tricky because we want the image to go into a particular place, not just be attached right at the bottom. So what we have to do is we put in an image tag here, and in that we put in this ID of where the image is in the attachments, and then it'll get inserted there later. So we're using this make message ID function, which has come from the email.utils a standard library that we've imported above, and that'll create this unique ID and then link the unique ID at the bottom. You can see the payload, we've added the image ID there to the payload, so it knows what to pull through and show up higher. So there's a lot going on here, but like I say, it's rather than go through each line of code, I thought I'd just give you the code and see if you can get it running, and that's the hardest part. Understanding the code later, that's not so hard, but once you've got an example that's running, then you can work with that to manipulate it and make it into something that is what you actually need to happen. All right. Okay, our esteemed team. My favorite numbers, I put it in strong this time rather than emphasize, and there they all are. So, and it's gone in the right spot, right up the top where I wanted it. So that's how I've created an HTML formatted email and sent it using a Gmail API that I've had to set up, and so that it can accept, and then it's all authenticated. Other people can't jump in and use my API because I've got the client secrets that they don't have, and then I can just delete those client secrets to if I decide that my application's been compromised in any way, and it just affects me and no one else. So that's what we're trying to achieve. Okay, so thanks very much for following along. It's pretty tricky. I haven't got much in the way of success messages coming from people who've been watching, but I am interested. If you did get something working, you can ask questions later, even once I've finished, in the Slack channel, and I can get back to you, or someone else who's watching it can get back to you and maybe help you. But hopefully I've provided everything in the YouTube, so even if it's just a case of going back over the YouTube video. Okay, today's class is primarily to demonstrate how to send email programmatically through Python. Yep, that's correct. That's all we're doing, but while watching it, you're learning other bits of Python as well. You've seen how functions are defined, how to call functions, how to use third-party libraries, how to use the Google API, which is really important in this era of high security. We have to learning these APIs that make everything secure and get you through the anti-spam blockers that are out there, really just trying to stop people writing programs that send emails, which is exactly what we're trying to do. So it's very tricky, but if you get it right, it should all go smoothly. Good. I've got a couple of thanks here, so that's great. I'm glad you liked it. Let me know if you're interested in how to create PDFs to attach to emails. I've done a session on that before, and I can update it for the new changes that are now in the Google Gmail API. Or if you want me to go back over the Microsoft one, so just ask for that as well, and I can set up a session one day that can use the Microsoft API for sending emails. Our next one, hopefully Arun will do one online next week for machine learning, and if not, then I'll be doing one in person on the 29th of March, so just 2 weeks away. I really recommend it. Please RSVP to meet up so we know how many people are coming, and we're going to try to provide pizza this time, so if we know who's coming, then that will really help us. And it's also great to meet people in person because we can chat and talk about each of our projects. Okay. If you like the video, click on like, and if subscribe to my channel if you want to be kept up to date when I release new videos. Bye for now.